Hi, in the last video we put a texture on the table. I've got the same table again, and this time I'm going to unwrap it for texture painting. So this is going to be slightly different. So I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. I'm going to go into the UV editing window straight away. We're not having a texture on this at all. Now the main difference is that we can't have shared texture space. Well, we can have shared texture space, but it's perhaps best if we don't. So, I mean, first of all, I can press A to select everything, and then I can go to Smart UV Project, and make sure you've got an island margin of about 0.04, otherwise you'll have issues. Now, that would be suitable for texture painting, and what's happened is every single part of a table is now got its own UV space, and it's not optimal, and you definitely wouldn't want to make a game asset where it's unwrapped quite like this, but it's not too bad. It really isn't. So with this done, we can then go into the texture paint workspace, and you'll see how this works. So in the texture space workspace, where it says no textures, I'm just going to click the plus button, and we're just going to have a base texture. There are other types of textures, but we're just going to have a color texture, and we're going to give it a base color, maybe a browny color like that, and then press OK. So the texture size is 1024. That's quite detailed. We'll press OK, and we've got our table, and if we come up here, we've got this base color. So what this allows us to do is we could pick a color and literally paint on that table leg. So let me just make the brush a little bit smaller. Let me make it half the size. So you can see this table leg and what happens when we're painting on it. So if I draw on here, it draws on this leg. So alternatively, I can also get a colour here, and I can paint on this map here, like this. So you can paint on both simultaneously. The other thing to know that's really useful is if I want to paint the rest of that yellow, I can press S and do a colour drop with the mouse, and if I come to colour palette, it'll be there, and if I click, you have to click on it, and then I'll get my yellow back, and as you can see, we can then paint over. So the reason I made the island margin is because when the object is scaled and MIP maps are generated, if there's no margin in between them, these colours will bleed into each other. So even if you don't go outside the rectangle, they could still bleed into each other. So you need to have a margin around the UVs, otherwise the game engine might overlap your colours when it creates MIP maps at different resolutions. So yeah, this allows you to then paint your whole table however you want. And I'm not actually going to do a proper painting tutorial in this video. I'm just showing you how each surface is, it's, you know, a unique space, and the underneath. So if you wanted the underneath to be darker and shadowy, we've got the separate UV area. So the brushes, there are some different brushes as well. So let me just colour pick that table. Click on here. So one quick thing you could do is get the colour you want for your wood, and if you very slightly make it darker, maybe there, and change your brush, I don't know, let's give it an 8, you can put in, you know, start putting in some grain, and you could have a slightly lighter colour or whatever you want to do. And you could start building up some basic grain, and then you'd go into it and you'd do some shading and so on. So the other thing I like to do is have a big brush, and I like to knock the strength down and have a darker colour and start shading, you know, like it's definitely underneath, but you know, where it touches the floor, start shading it like this. And it will make your object look a lot more sort of realistic and solid. You might want to turn that down a bit. 0.1 is actually a good value for doing with shading, but you could do it underneath the edges where it meets and so on, at the bottom, you know, really make it look. And when you've got a floor, that will make it look like ambient occlusion, and it will make your table seem to be attached to the base. So that's a very quick introduction to texture painting, and I know that's by no means a nice looking table, but it gives you the idea of how you would go about it. And you can paint in this window, or you can paint in this window, and if you've got a graphics tablet, it's even easier. Just very quickly, there are some more tools, you know, smudge, if you want to do smudging and stuff like that. You can fill areas as well, but most of it's self-explanatory in terms of painting, and you can use textures and so on and so on. We'll have a look at the other layers later in another video, but for now that's texture painting. Thank you.